I'm Steve Gilman, and this is Brand Story, where we help you build stronger, more sustainable brands by sharing insightful conversations with brand leaders, marketers, and professional storytellers. My guest today is Simon Hill.
I think some of the best adventure is fueled by fear, and I think you have to embrace that fear because I think we do our best work. I think some of the best things in life that you can experience are done when you have some fear driving you.
Welcome to Brand Story. I'm your host, Steve Gilman, and my guest today is Simon Hill. Simon is president of FutureBrand North America, where he leads one of the most respected brand transformation consultancies in the world. He and his team have helped many iconic brands, from airlines to tech to hospitality and healthcare. And his career has spanned global agencies and successful Olympic bids, and his work is both strategic and deeply human. Hi, Simon. Welcome to Brand Story.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the kind introduction.
Yeah, I'm really happy to talk to you today. I've been a fan of, like I was telling you right before we started, I've been a fan of FutureBrand's work. You know, you guys are a big part of IPG, and I know you spent years and years at McCann, I think, in London, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So you're an ad guy that kind of ended up in brand, and I think that's really cool. So one of the things I wanted to ask you right away, because I find it fascinating, I know this is going back in time a little bit, but you led one of the successful bid for the 2012 London Olympics.
That's right.
And,
yeah.
And landed that whole thing. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, that was it's a blast from the past, but I'm happy to talk about it. So yeah, you're right. I was a McCann at the time, and I was at that point, I was running new business for McCann in London. And the pitch for the 2012 Olympic and Paralympics came up, and we had a run at it. It was a really good opportunity for us to come together. I think probably for the first time, really, as McCann World Group.
Yeah.
And so we pulled together a great team of a ragtag bunch of passionate brand, marketing, advertising, media, sports specialists, and got the team together and conveyed and pulled together a very compelling pitch that matched the goals for what London was trying to do, the Olympics and Paralympics. And so we pitched it. McCann was the lead, and we brought in FutureBrand, Octagon, MRM, and Momentum, and had a fantastic 4 or 5 years of both pitch and then working on the project to fruition for the games in 2012.
Yeah, and honestly, one of the best executed three. I mean, it was amazing. You all did incredible work. There was tons written about it at the time. I remember following it and just, wanting to have been in the room during the pitch and hear that, because the executions afterwards were just flawless. It was extremely well done. It was incredible work.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And I think we collectively got to a really strong strategy, and we call it the golden thread that ran through everything that we did. And so every experience, every touch point, every moment, whether it was you buying tickets or you meeting a games maker or volunteer, it was consistently on brand and true to what London was doing for both the IOC and the IPC. So it was a huge success, and I think some of the stuff we were most proud of was the fact for the first time ever a Paralympic Games was sold out before the games itself. Wow. So putting the Paralympics on a parallel as it should be with the Olympics was fantastic, and it became a really good litmus test, and also I think sort of flag bearer for future games coming forward. And obviously here in the US, we're very excited for LA in 28.
Yeah, I honestly, I remember it being sort of a step up for the Olympic Games, and how in every aspect of how it was marketed, how the experience seemed to flow. It was really extremely well done. So I'm a huge fan of all the various agencies that played a part. But I just think it's so cool that you were in the room landing that business and then saw it all the way through. Yeah,
it was great. And it was the move, actually, that was sort of having done new business. And I love new business. And it's obviously, we're a project-based business at FutureBrand. It's part of our bread and butter. But it was the sort of the moment that I said, hey, listen, we've won this. I want to run it and work on it for the next 4 years. And it was quite the ride.
Yeah, I'm glad you got a chance to work on it, because sometimes if you pitch something like that and then don't get to work on it.
Exactly.
That would be such a drag, especially if something of that scope and size and complexity. So what drew you into, I was taking a look at your career, and you've been working in agencies for a long time and ended up at FutureBrand. And what kind of drew you to working at sort of this intersection of brand and business away from just, ad?
I think, to be honest, the Olympic and Paralympic experience was quite an informative one and helped shape that. That was where I first met FutureBrand.
That makes sense.
And having worked on a host of different ad accounts and bits of business, which I really enjoyed and learned a huge amount, I think what shifted for me was, and I know this has come up in a couple of your other interviews that I've seen, being at that top table, being present with the brand leaders, the decision makers. You are, I think you said it actually, you're closer to the brand itself, when you're right there with those founders, CEOs, and the C-suite. And I think that's when we do our best work, we're working hand in hand with that C-suite level and that group. And for me, I think that is what makes the work exciting. It's coming out of what I was doing before. It's you feel a little bit exposed because you're at the most senior level you can be within an organization, and any good brand strategy and brand experience has got to support the business strategy and business growth. And so you really are at the sharp end of the business and the brand. And for me, that's, I think, where we do our best work and what makes it exciting.
Yeah, it's a really unique place to be. And when you have the trust of like a senior team or senior leaders or founders, I really think that's where the great work happens, because, working in advertising as well, but I spend my time working in brand. There's a lot of times you pitch a campaign or you're working on a campaign, but it feels a little transactional. I think brand feels, there's just such a commitment, and it's so 360, and it's such usually long work, that when the relationships really work out between leaders and brand consultants, you get some really special things coming out of it.
Absolutely. And you're thinking, you're testing it, and you're having to prove it at every touch point and at every level. Yes, of course, the celebration of the idea has got to be perfect in comms and communication, but how does the brand and how does that idea show up you mentioned airlines, at 35,000 feet? Yeah. How does it show up in mobile in your hand, on shelf, on pack? And how can you ensure that you're coming up with ideas and thinking that are going to be able to work at all those different levels and in those different ways for different audiences? So it's fun. It's challenging. It's not straightforward, but it's a lot of fun.
Definitely.
It keeps us, on our toes. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's one of the richest lines of work you can be in. From it's so experiential and it's so human. Yeah. So of course, there's the media buying and everything plays a role. But absolutely, yeah. Of course, in IPG, you have all these great partners for data, for all these different things. But you are a little bit of the tip of the spear, trying to figure out the complexity of how you're not only going to crystallize an idea and make it operational, how are you going to deliver it consistently after that? So it does become something you live.
Yeah, absolutely. And the good thing about being part of IPG is you can then test that with the experts in their particular channels and their fields of expertise, and sort of say, hey, listen, has this got legs here? How does this work? And can it really spread into all the different areas that we need it to? And so I think that's where quickly coming together with those other agency teams is great. And we do it a lot on a whole host of different types of businesses, brands, B2B, consumer, whatever it may be.
Yeah. I think a lot of independent agencies like to bash the big holding companies. It's kind of easy. I think both have their strengths. But certainly your reach, your ability to pluck assistants out of thin air, not exactly thin air, but out of your group, and bring in expertise and data, and just like it's for a global brand or a brand of any, giant scope, how else would they even do it without people like you?
Yeah, it's great, and it's not for all clients necessarily, but it's great having access to the reinforcements and the expertise as you need it. And we're actually quite small, and I think that's where we resonate quite well with so many clients. Is we're not a big firm coming in. I mean, we're large and very competitive in our space, obviously, but we have a brilliant team, small, nimble, entrepreneurial thinkers that can go in and we might not be experts in a particular category per se, but we understand brand, we understand experience, and how you can use brand to reach specific audiences and address certain needs. And I think C-suite react really well to that. Yeah. It's not something it's not a team that's going away and doing something to an organization. You're working in the trenches with them, understanding their businesses and using the skills and experience we've got to then bring that to bear for their brand and their experience.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by how personal it is.
Mm.
You know, that's why it's like a small, more entrepreneurial team that can get in, roll up its sleeves, and be on the same page. Because for the C-suite, for founders, for leaders at this level, it's really remarkably personal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And interestingly, I think you can do more heavy lifting as a small team.
yeah,
So I look at
absolutely.
some of those biggest assignments. You talked about the Olympic and Paralympics. We're working with a huge professional services company right now, and again we have a small, highly effective team, really deep in with the client, together with World Group, and I think you can do an incredible amount of lifting as a small team. You make decisions quickly with the decision makers of the organization, and you can move fast, which is great.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. It really does. I mean, if you're not nimble trying to figure out the kind of complexity that surrounds brand, you're not gonna. I mean, if it grinds to a halt, you lose all momentum, and
Totally.
all of a sudden things fall apart. So, with all the work you've done, especially lately, American Airlines and Kohler and Nesquik and all, I mean, I could just sit here and list your clients at you. But is there any particular project that just really jumps out at you lately that you're particularly proud of that your team has worked on?
I think, I mean, I mentioned the professional services space. We've been knee deep with PwC as an organization as they've been shifting their brand and as they evolve as a business, they've gone through huge leadership change. They are 370,000 employees globally. And we as a core team, together with McCann World Group, but initially it's been FutureBrand driving that sort of initial strategy. I think really proud of the team that's been working on that at scale, across markets, across lines of service, with highly intelligent, highly effective business leaders in their own particular space, and being able to, I think, get up to speed with the business, work with the organization, and help to unlock what's true about them and what's going to be right for them in a crazy, evolving, shifting world they find themselves in, like all of us. I think I'm really proud of that work. And on the flip side, you can go from huge professional services, brand transformation and supporting them with their growth, and then look at, say, the Open from a golf perspective.
Yeah.
Well, our small team has helped develop that experience with the RNA, thinking about how spectators, players, visitors can turn up in a small town in Ireland and experience, the best golf event on the planet. So, there's all sorts of different types of work and different clients, and it plays to a passion area of mine in sport that you've seen throughout my career and thread there. But being able to do that at scale and with the world watching, I think that's just two very different examples in the B2B space and in the consumer space, and from an experiential point of view, of some great work that we can do and bring to life in multiple different touch points. Right. So if that's at a pitch for PwC, working with a huge oil and gas company or whatever, whoever they might be working with as clients, through to someone turning up in Portrush in Ireland, wanting to watch Scotty Scheffler or whoever it may be, win the Open. It's fun to be able to do that type of variety of different work, and the consistent thread through it all is brand and brand experience.
Yeah, I think, brand experience work and brand work is so rewarding. And something you mentioned a second ago that I think is an observation that I've had. There are brand industry specialists that work in we work in healthcare, we work in this, we work in that. I've always thought that having a broad experience, like the fact that you're, working on the huge golf tournament in Ireland while you're also working at a professional services firm, what I've always found is that those various experiences cross-pollinate in a really healthy way. Because the things you learn from a London Olympics strangely end up being portable to a professional services brand, at least thematically or in a human way. Have you found that?
Absolutely. I mean, if I look at, if you think about the volunteer program for the Olympics and Paralympics, and we shifted the perception and how you talk about volunteering into games makers. These are the people that are making the games happen. They don't care whether it's rain or shine. They don't care if they're, we talked about handing Usain Bolt his towel after his 100 meters, or if they're painting logos onto ping pong balls in a warehouse in Southwest London. they understand what they're doing and how they're making the games happen.
Yeah.
And creating a brand and an experience like that is not dissimilar to someone competing in professional services, thinking about, right, what's our differentiator? How am I going to pitch our brand? What we're going to offer our experience, what we're going to offer our clients or prospective clients in a changing landscape where value is shifting and they're worried about their industry and the erosion of trust if they're in financial services, whatever it may be. So thinking about creating unique, differentiating experiences that are true to an individual brand and how that shows up through it's a personal experience and it's people ultimately,
Right.
And again, in another one of your podcasts, you were talking about the shift of selling products to people.
Yeah.
Those two examples are people selling an experience and bringing an experience to life. And you've got to ensure that you're delivering it in a way that's true to the brand and is going to draw people in.
Yeah. And that's a remarkably consistently human endeavor, but
totally.
Regardless of all the statements brand people can put together and all the plans we can put together, if you don't understand human behavior and you don't understand the fact that these are emotional decisions and emotional experiences and that you're trying to elicit feeling, you can have all the industry experience you want.
Absolutely. Because it's feeling that drives, feeling drives reasons behind buying products and services, buying experiences, why you remain loyal, why you stay with a certain brand. And that's all emotion, feelings driven by brand and people.
Do you ever find yourself arguing for that? I always, when you're in the C-suite, I've run into this a few times where you're just arguing with brilliant people who think logic moves the day.
Yeah.
And you're trying to convince them that no, actually emotion will move these people, not proof points, not logic. Do you ever run into that in your various situations you're in?
I was going to say I find myself arguing all the time, but we all do, right?
You do have to argue a lot.
I think we find ourselves, and I think this is where you get to really great work and great ideas, is when you're trying to trigger and find, right, what's the emotion that we're trying to elicit, and how do you get that emotion in your space?
Right.
It's relatively straightforward when you've got rabid fans of a sport going to an event. You know what that emotion is. You can see it, you can feel it, you can hear it. What is the emotion that's going to tip a decision at store, on shelf, online, in a boardroom? That's sometimes a little bit more difficult to elicit and get out.
Yeah.
And what's brilliant is these organizations know they've built businesses on the back of understanding that emotion, but they can't always tap into it and drive it, particularly when you find yourself in a much more commoditized market. Competition is more fierce. Categories are being disrupted. So that's where I think the fight is. And it's not so much about arguing, but it's just sort of fighting for where is that, McCann talk a lot about truth. Where is that truth? And how can we really extract that and build an idea and stories around it? So yes, but that's what we're sort of fighting and arguing for. Where is that emotion and how can we bring it out?
Yeah, I think that it really is the work, and it's it ends up being very personal. It ends up being you're trying to guide people and help them. So you all have, I think FutureBrand has a really cool approach and a really good culture the way you work from what I've read. Yeah. And you talk a lot about a transformation ladder, because really what you're trying to do is create positive change for these brands that are in situations where I always think it's like a brand or a CEO or a C-suite group of leaders, they want change, but it is frightening because if you go in the wrong direction. So can you unpack a little bit about with FutureBrand and your methods that you use?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have, we're very lucky in that we've built a really strong culture. We've got a really strong team, and no matter where you were to sort of drop and find yourself, I think, I've been at FutureBrand for 12 years now, and feels like a long time when you say it out loud. But we are the most, I think, connected we've ever been. And I think that's not to say that you get a homogenized experience as a client coming in, but we use our thinking, our methodology, our approach, and we've got fantastic individuals and talent that can drive that. We've hired good people and got out of the way. When it comes to, I think, the kind of our approach and methodology, I think we've got really good at understanding how can we unlock a truth of a brand
Yeah.
And that we, as you say, when we believe is when you transform a brand, you can change the future. So you change the brand, you can change the future of that business. And we have a number of tools that help unlock that. And one of them is the transformation ladder. And we think about, and that's where we think about, okay, what are the business ambitions and what are the transformations that we want to affect in your organization from a people point of view, from people experience, from a client experience, from a brand experience. And I think when you're having those arguments and those heated discussions at the C-suite level, when you land it to and can land it in what's the business transformation we want to make?
Yeah.
What's the client experience transformation we're trying to unlock? When you can land it in those terms, then we can come in and think about, right, what's the emotion? What's the behavior? What's the brand experience we're creating on the back of that? And I think, we talk a lot about, and Nespresso is a really good example of one of the brands we've been working with over 20 odd years now.
Yeah.
And at the heart of the work that we do for them, we have something called the FutureBrand idea. And when we have a tool that talks about your brand idea on a page and how can you ensure that when someone's picking that up and understanding what that idea is, how can they make decisions that are on brand every day that are right? And so for Nespresso, the FutureBrand idea for them is them being the Louis Vuitton of coffee. So we position them as not as a coffee brand, but as a luxury brand that happens to make coffee. And when you think about that, you can think about, okay, I can see how that informs decisions in and around what's the retail experience like. Yeah. You're handing over luxury items, so you're not touching the pods. They're presented to you in these sleeves in a bag, like it's a luxury retail experience. Whereas your physical retail environment, it's in the company of other luxury brands. You naming from a brand perspective, yeah. We lift from and borrow from naming conventions in wine. Think about Grand Cru and different flavors that come from that. Photography, you never photograph the beans themselves, but the pods are treated like jewels.
Yeah,
we use jewelry photography. So you can see all the different decisions made that we might not be making, but we're helping to inform those decisions.
Yeah.
Because again, like us, the brand teams are small teams. And, they're letting these brands out into their organizations globally, hundreds, thousands of employees and partners. And they want to be confident they're creating a brand that people understand and that's easy to execute against.
Yeah.
So that's where I think that's, a helpful example where our tool, we talk about it as the Brand Plus with the future brand idea in the middle of it that can help. People can go, right, I understand. I know what I'm going to name this thing. I know how I'm going to treat it. I know how the experience is going to be like in store. And then you get a really strong brand experience throughout every touch point.
Yeah. And consistent across every touch point as well. I'm a customer of that and I can see your work and that was resonating with me because you're right. The way, and I love when brand is great and you guys do an awful lot of great work, it's through every single detail.
Yeah.
There's a saying that I've always loved, like you can do whatever you want, but everything does matter.
Yeah.
Like you can be careless. You can kind of half-ass it. You can get 80% of the way there and think you're done. But when you get 100% of the way there or damn close, you get branding like that because you're right. You do even the photography you guys do is like for that product, it does look like it's a precious luxury item.
Yeah.
It's brilliant, So I love that kind of detailed work. One of the other things you all do, which is becoming more and more popular, but I think you do incredible work with this, is integrating sensory elements into branding, haptics, verbal, sonic sounds, all that. Can you talk just a little bit about that practice? Because you probably weren't doing that back in 2012 days with the London Olympics.
We weren't. And actually, God, I would love to have been able to build in. So, it kind of grew organically, but I'd love to have been able to bring in more sonic and haptic into that. So, regardless of what we're tasked to do with a client, we'll always say to them, listen, we will think the advantage of us is we can think about it through every touch point, every sense, every way in which a brand might be experienced. And so from our creative practices, for example, we think about visual identity, verbal identity, sonic identity. And, for PwC, we've been working on their sonic brand a lot.
Yeah.
So every brief that goes in, we think about it through those lenses. And so we have fantastic teams that can think about how does a brand, what does it feel like? What does it touch? What does it touch? What does it sound like? What does it smell like when we're in a trade environment, for instance? What kind of experience do we want to create where you've got people passing through who are incredibly fatigued and just overwhelmed with all sorts of things? How can we create something that feels refreshing and a little bit different, that can just spark another kind of emotion? So within our strategic and creative teams, we have people that are experts in all those different elements of sonic, haptic, naming, verbal identity, visual identity. And really, we then start to sort of stress test how a brand can be brought to life. It won't be a surprise to learn that in Paris, our team are fantastic at luxury branding and thinking about that luxury experience and sort of how that informs surfaces, as well as, the actual haptic experience that to touch. So it's really something that's embedded in all of our thinking and all of our work. That's not to say that it's for every client,
Right.
but when we are working with brands where there is an opportunity to deliver a consistent holistic experience and think about brand in different other engaging ways, then that's when we'll typically work with our broader teams in creative to start to bring the brand to life. And you get some really exciting stuff, and that can feed back to inform the brand idea as well.
Right. Yeah, it really can. I mean, you never know where the real pearl is going to come from. And
Exactly,
sometimes
yeah.
it does come from one of those little details.
Yeah.
And it brings everything even more alive. Yeah. Anyone listening, if you haven't, tracked down some of FutureBrand's work and looked at what they do and how they execute with such incredible level of detail, if you're into brand marketing, if you're a nerd like me, or you work in this field, or you're just a marketer, you have to go look at FutureBrand. I really honestly think you guys are at the top, certainly at the top of your games, but really at the top of the industry.
Thank you. That's kind to say. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and we've got some great people, and kudos to our clients as well. They understand the power of this stuff and really willing to invest in brand and brand experience. It makes such a difference.
Yeah, the enlightened CEOs and enlightened leaders that really understand why the detail matters are great clients and a blast to work with. So what do you wish, just in general, like when you're working with a new client or you're going into a new organization, what do you wish that a CEO or a C-suite leader understood about brand that you run into? What's a common misconception, or what do you wish they understood?
I think, sometimes brand is for the wrong reasons and for whatever reasons can be seen as a dirty word. And I listened to another chat that you had where you said, the situations where people said, don't mention brand. I've been in those situations before where you're like, okay, this is an uphill conversation. But, so I think we wish for and look for, and more often than not, see clients and CEOs that are open to how their brand can be brought to life and experienced. I think, no one knows their clients, their customers, their people better than, ideally a well-informed CEO, which totally is the case. But then understanding, okay, there might be other ways to reach them, to engage with them, and being open. So I think being open to the power of brand, I think, is what we wish for the most. And then I think you find clients that really push you.
Yeah.
And it's good to feel uncomfortable and to be pushed by your clients, because then you're all striving for the best work and the best brands.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, that's most exciting about this work is when you get someone that does understand the power of their brand and sees the potential and understands why brand is so powerful, especially in this day and age. I think brand is more powerful now than it ever has been.
Definitely. And they will know, and they do know. We often talk about, sort of your brand on its best day.
Yeah.
And our job is about expanding that, making that happen more often, extending it through other different ways, as we said, be it sonic, be it haptic, be it experiences. And they will know that, and they will feel that when they know their brand is resonating and working.
Yeah. Well said. One more question, and then I'm going to move on to kind of some different type of questions. A lot of people coming into the industry, I have friends that are instructors at the, brand center and different places that train people in what, end up being employees for you all or for us. And, what's one takeaway for like emerging brand, workers or brand leaders or designers that you wish was taught or you wish people knew more?
You mentioned it a little bit earlier. I think don't forget the power of human insight, human emotion, human interaction. There is no doubt that there's all sorts of exciting things happening in tech with AI, et cetera, and how the tools that we can use. But let's remember they're tools.
Yeah.
And don't forget the power of that. And I think that's true of all walks of life. As I have a 16-year-old who's starting to think about, what do I do with college, and
Right.
how do I get myself noticed, and where do I want to go, and all that sort of stuff. It's the human part of the story is really important. And so I think that's something that I think is very important for young people coming up, to demonstrate that you understand human behavior.
Yeah.
And human creativity, human interaction, human insights.
I couldn't agree
as
with
much as the tools that you can use to elicit them.
Yeah. I think, they've grown up in a very different way where their phone is always part of their experience and technology is. But, it's honestly, I always try to tell young people if I go give a talk, like, try to work in a restaurant.
Yeah.
And deal with other human beings. And
bar,
work in some kind of hospitality where you
Mhm.
have to have these negotiated human experiences that are sometimes difficult and sometimes really rewarding. Go to an art gallery, go to travel, see how other people live. I think that's what makes, ultimately, experience is what makes great brand marketers.
Absolutely. But, be comfortable in a room of strangers with people.
Right.
There were many challenges to COVID and educating children through it. One of the things I noticed with our youngest was that I think her age and their generation became fantastic at reading eyes.
Oh, good point.
Because mouths were covered up.
Wow.
And so they were able to, they sort of not developed a new skill, but because eye contact is so important.
Yeah.
But they are heightened awareness of what are people saying with their eyes? How can I engage with that? How is mood changing and shifting? And I still see it with her today. And, she's got two older brothers who are idiots, but, so she's a lot more emotionally skilled than they are. But, I think
that's amazing.
Seeing things like that, I think is, there's still so much that we can develop and learn and, use as part of our language toolkit and emotional toolkit when we're connecting.
Yeah. That kind of empathic learning, is just amazing. I have a theater background, so the, how people behave and their eyes and just emotion has informed so much of my work. Because it's just powerful, and I think as technology accelerates and as AI becomes such a part and such a tool for everyone, I kind of think there's going to be more of a premium put on brand experience and human experience and all the things that people will become more thirsty for.
Totally agree. Yeah, absolutely.
So let me ask you a question about, I read that you swam the English Channel for charity.
I did,
yeah. Can you tell, because I want to ask you just a couple of questions about you as we kind of start to wrap this up.
My midlife crisis.
Okay. Because that's insane. How'd that come about?
My wife said it would have been, she said many things, but it was quite disruptive, I think, in the family dynamic.
I bet.
All the training I was doing. But it's, I've always swum.
Yeah.
I still swim sort of on a daily basis. And I lost a very dear friend to mental health and wanted to do something to help people that maybe were in his situation when we were younger, and found this incredible charity called Young Minds. And we raised a bunch of money for kids who struggle with mental health. And I'm very, with kids, the mental health challenges that kids are facing are very different to what we face as kids, they're no less challenging, sometimes much more. And so we had this fantastic cause that we identified, and I'd always wanted to do it. And I can be a bit pig-headed and stubborn. And it was just a really good challenge. And it was a couple of years ago now, but loved doing it.
Good for you. One, what an incredible cause and a great thing to be involved in. But two, that takes some real guts. I'll tell you, that is not a short swim. So this is a question that I originally asked Christian Cavallo, who is the CEO of the Martin Agency and a good friend of mine.
She's fantastic.
Oh, what a wonderful human being.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite questions. Where is the line for you between fear and adventure?
I think, for me, I'm not sure there is a line. I think, and it's interesting you ask it after, sort of when we're talking about the swim a little bit, because I think, and as I think about the work that we do and wanting to be pushed, I think some of the best adventure is fueled by fear. And I think you have to embrace that fear because I think we do our best work. I think some of the best things in life that you can experience are done when you have some fear driving you.
Yeah.
Provided you have the comfort in knowing, we've put in the work. I'm surrounded by people that can solve this challenge. I've done the training for the swim.
Yeah.
So I know I can swim for this length of time. I've just got to keep on going and embrace the suck was one of the phrases that we said during it. I think, yes. So for me, I'm not sure if there's a hard line necessarily, but it's something that I think at the best moments, you have fear that drives some of that passion, adventure. And I think as long as you feel, we talk about it a lot within our culture, that, we have some very talented, very young people going into big organizations. And I think, like in sport, I sort of say, if you're good enough, you're old enough, but know that you've always got the support of whoever you need in the room or back at the office to help solve, address, and create great ideas and great adventures. That I think all of these little projects that we do, big, small, across category, are all adventures, and they're all filled with moments of fear throughout them. Are we doing the right thing for this brand? Are we going to be able to crack it? How do we best bring in the expertise across IPG and World Group? So I think they coalesce and live together.
I love that answer. And I think that, embrace the suck part is a great analogy to any really long-term heavy duty project. Because when you're in the middle of it, I think ultimately in the middle of any giant project that's meaningful, you're going to feel a little lost for a minute.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You're going to start to have doubts. Can I keep swimming? Is this going to work? And I think, for any young marketer or any young person getting into brand, I think, nothing we're doing is certain. So there is an element of fear to it sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And understand the reason behind it, your why, and understand, I think if you've got a very clear distillation of or crystallization of your idea and the brand, that will see you through as well.
Well said. Really well said. So what's a trait of yours that you used to think was a weakness that you've now learned to value?
Quite competitive. And sometimes that used to be, I used to feel like not everything's a competition, Simon. Chill out, relax. But I think having a competitive spirit, I think, can be really helpful. I think as long as it's, it's something that we talk a little bit about within our culture, that I think as long as we're competitive together, then I think it's a really powerful force. We want to win. We want to do great work. We want to do the best work. We want to push ourselves. We want to push our clients. And it's all in the spirit of doing and creating the best work possible. So I think now, with a bit of time, I still need to temper it a bit. I think it's a good trait to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in this line of work. So what would you call this chapter of your life right now?
Great question. I would call this chapter investment. I feel like I'm passionate about what we're doing. I'm really excited about, I think, FutureBrand. I think the time that we're in, loving getting to know kind of our full offer and investing in our teams across the US. I feel that personally as well. I seem to spend my life driving my kids to various sports things. My wife and I sort of do that. And so it feels like we're investing a lot of time in that. But, it's all going to pay off. And I think as long as we keep eyes on the horizon for what we're doing here at FutureBrand, I think I'd probably say, investment.
That's great. I love that. Last question, and then I'll let you go. I know you have a very busy day. What advice would you give your younger self sitting where you are now?
I was going to say don't rush, but I think don't be impatient. Don't be impatient. It'll come. And I have to keep telling myself that now. Don't be impatient. It's you'll get there when you'll get there. Don't be fixated on a that was the thing with the channel as well. I was like, what time I want to swim this time. It's like, what, don't worry about the time. Just get there. So I think don't be impatient.
Man, that's a great message for anyone listening. And I think that's probably your balance for being competitive too.
Yeah, I think passion has a little bit of, it can turn into impatience a little bit. Yeah. And so, I'd say that.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Hey, this has been really wonderful. I'm so glad we got the time together to talk a bit. And I wish you, continued luck in this part of your life where you're just investing all this great energy and doing this great work. And FutureBrand is amazing. So bravo to you and your team.
Likewise. Thanks so much for this time, Steve, and really appreciate your support of FutureBrand.
Want to hear more inspiring stories? Subscribe on your preferred podcast app so you don't miss an episode. And if you like what we're doing, please rate, review, and share. It's the best way to support us. Thank you for listening to Brand Story.